What a love. Amen. Exodus chapter 15 is where we'll be. Still looking at Moses and moving through the events of the Hebrews here and them becoming a nation and their struggle. And we're going to look at a struggle that they have and that we have as well. And you're all going to appreciate it when I talk about the struggle that they're at today, because their struggle today is grumbling and bitterness. Anybody want to testify this morning? Everybody out there is clean from this, aren't you? None of you sitting out there today grumble or bitter or complain or have animosity toward anything or anybody, right? You're all dismissed. If you do not fall in that category, feel free to exit the building right now and be dismissed, that you're free from that. I didn't think so. If you did exit, then you need to come back in, because I would think you to be lying. There is a term of style of clothing, I guess now it's called athleisure, and it's been around for quite some time. And I'm not talking about pajamas that people wear we haven't got there. We'll talk about pajamas in Walmart another time. We're talking about athleisure right now. But there's a line of clothing that's called athleisure. It describes a type of leisure athletic wear, as the name states, and all the companies make it, and anybody that wants to make a buck, they try to design some type of this clothing, this casual, athletic looking casual wear. As a matter of fact, it's one of, if not the largest segment of athletic wear right now, and every company makes it. But the thing is, it's not only for athletic people. It's not only for sports people to buy. People that sit on a couch and eat potato chips buy athleisure wear. They want to give, the thing about the people on the couches, they want to give the appearance that they are something or do something that they are not or do not do. Most people want to give off that appearance, but it is something that they don't do, that it is something that they are not, and as a matter of fact, it's really something that they're not going to do. Let's just be honest. But they want to wear this athleisure wear to give off the appearance that maybe they are athletic. Well, this is exactly what you find the Hebrews in Exodus chapter 15 and 16. In chapter 15, they look like they have been worshiping. That's where we left them last week. We came to this song of Moses. Remember, we talked about that in the beginning of chapter 15. That was the first recorded song in Scripture. Maybe not the first one sung, but it was the first one that was pinned down for us. And I also told you about the significance of that in Revelation as well, and who the ones were that would get to sing that song of Moses. Also, it was set aside for a select group of people. So it appears that they have crossed the Red Sea. It appears that they have been worshiping. It appears that they are singing praise. They have just had a tremendous victory in crossing that Red Sea and seeing their adversaries drowned. And what did Moses say about them? He said, the thing that haunts you right now, the thing that you fear, the thing that you dread, you're not going to see it for a long, long time, for the rest of their lifetime. And we found out, we discovered Sunday night, that it was actually 550 years later before the Egyptians came back and were harassing the Hebrews again. So they have just had this tremendous victory. If you had experienced a victory like that, how long would it take for you to go back to grumbling? How long would it take for you to go back to being bitter? If the thing that you feared the most had just been annihilated, just been wiped out, just been removed from the face of the earth, how long would it take for you to go back to being bitter? It takes them all of 3 days. 3 days for them to go back to their bitterness. at the end of this, at the end of chapter 15, you wonder, how could this actually be? Is this actually the same group of people that started off the first part of chapter 15 that is finishing off the last part of chapter 15? Or have they just thrown some clothes on to make them appear to be something that they're really not? We do that in Christian life as well. We want to say, hey, look how committed I am. Look how devoted I am. Look at how well I sing. I actually know the notes in the hymnal that we say. Therefore, I'm more holy and religious than you are because you can't even carry a tune in a bucket, you know? We think that's good. We think I'm committed if I can do that. But the rest of the week, if we were to look at the rest of your week, we would wonder, this is not the same person that sits here for an hour on Sunday morning service. They have just put on some clothes for a Sunday morning service. They're appearing to be something that they really are not the rest of the week. We want others to think, hey, I've got it together. I've got it all down. I've got this thing figured out. Follow me. I'm wiser than you. I have more knowledge than you. But sometimes God leads us to experiences in our life so that He can expose how shallow our faith and our life really is. Sometimes God leads us to experiences in our life to uncover how shallow our faith truly is. And that's where they are. So in chapter 15, they move from this great victory. But in a few short hours, the wheels of the whole nation fall off and they find themselves in a place of bitterness. And it is extremely hard and difficult to see how these people could be the same ones. These Hebrews, they just experienced the greatest event, the greatest miracle in the whole Old Testament with the victory over Egypt, the greatest army in the world at that time, at the Red Sea. And a few short hours later, they're grumbling. How could people who've experienced such a great miracle move into grumbling so quickly? 15 verse 22. Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days into the wilderness and found no water. Now, we would like to think that maybe Moses just made a wrong turn. Maybe there was a road sign or a detour ahead. Maybe there was some, man, what about that road construction in Benton, you know? How long is it going to go on? I mean, it's for years now. We had to drive backwards through all the road construction today. They said, put your car in reverse and navigate through it. That's where you're at in Benton now. We would like to think that there was some road construction on the way to this event right here, like is out here in town. And Moses just made a wrong turn, or maybe he didn't go through it the right way, and he ended up on a side street or something. We would like to think that this is an accident caused by human error, and he just took a wrong turn. But they're 3 days into the wilderness, and they find no water. But could Moses have taken a wrong turn? No, because they weren't really following Moses, were they? They were following God, and how was God leading them? God was leading them with fire and a cloud, right? That's how God was giving them direction. So it was God who led them to this place. God may lead you to a place that you don't like. You may not appreciate what you're going through, what you've been through. You may not appreciate something that comes a decade from now. But God may lead you there. So God's the one who led them. Did God provide for them? Did God give them protection? God gave them protection with the clouds, so much so that it was night that the Egyptians couldn't move. They couldn't see their hand in front of their face. But yet the Hebrews had a light of day to move and to navigate by. They walked through that congealed water. They saw the fish on the other side. They went through the first aquarium. They saw that. They experienced that. They watched the Egyptians get wiped out. God leads them from victory into a time of trouble. Matter of fact, they go from triumph, victory, testing, trouble, and we're going to see that He gives instruction as well. We don't like that, though. We don't like that God leads sometimes from triumph to trouble. And it happens though. And it's what happened to them. God does not always move you from mountaintop to mountaintop. God does not always take you from easy to easy. God does not always take you from victory to victory. Sometimes things show up on lab reports, on test reports that we don't like. Sometimes people who have had a job for 25 years at the same company, they get let go. And we wonder, God, these were good Christian people. These were good followers of yours. These were men and God, men and women of God here, but yet this has happened to them. So what do you do with that? What do you do with that when things happen to faithful people? There are times that we go from triumph to trouble, and we wonder why, but look, you're not alone. Listen here, God is with you at all times. Isaiah 41, chapter 41, verse 10 will be on the screen. Do not fear, for I am with you. I'm with you. I'm with you in the triumph. I'm with you in the struggle. I'm with you in the trial. I'm with you when trouble comes. I'm the God of protection. I'm the God of healing. I'm the God of salvation. I'm the God who provides. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. Surely I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. That's the God we want right there, the one that's with us. He's with you no matter where you go, no matter what chapter or phase or struggle in life that you're in. He's still with you. He's not separated himself from you. Now the Hebrews are here. They're looking for water. God showed Moses a tree. Moses throws that tree in the water, and the water becomes sweet. Remember, it's bitter water. We're going to read that here in just a second. God did not lead them to a place and then leave them. God does not take you to a place and abandon you. God does not leave you where you are. He's there all the time, Isaiah said. Verse 23. Here it is. When they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore it was named Marah. It was named bitter. Marah means bitter. Verse 24 and 25. So the people grumbled at Moses, saying, What shall we drink? Then he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, and he threw it into the waters, and the waters became sweet. So now they go from trouble, they're in the wilderness, and now here's the test. The test is upon them. And God's going to show them a few things. He's going to test them with a few things and show them a few things. Remember in verse 25, it says he turns the water from bitter. The water was bitter. That's what Marah was. It was bitter, and he's going to turn it to sweet. Miracles do not deepen your faith. Miracles do not deepen your faith. They just saw the greatest miracle in the Old Testament, but was their faith deepened at all? No, it was not. Have you ever said, well, if I could just experience that, if I could just have an experience, if I could just have the greatest experience ever, and to know and to see something, to see this revealed, to see this thing done for me, it would completely change my life. Have you ever thought that? Have you ever said that? That if you could just experience the greatest thing ever, that it would completely change your life? Obviously, apparently, no, it would not. Because they experienced something that you'll never experience. And it didn't change them. It didn't change them. So miracles do not deepen your faith. Their faith was still shallow. Here's the second thing. The second thing that God shows them here. This water that they were at, it reflected their life. Verse 25. It says it was bitter. The water was bitter. Verse 24 says that they were grumbling. The people grumbled at Moses, saying, What shall we drink? So there's bitterness, there's grumbling. This water is a reflection of their life. God leads them to this pool of water. They have been in the desert for 3 days. Who led them there? God did. And where does he lead them? He already knows their heart. He already knows their heart is about to erupt, about to spew out in bitterness and grumbling, and he leads them to this place. He leads them to this water that they really want, that they think they want. And what do? When he leads them to this water, what do? They see the water. What do they pull out? They pull out their coolers, they pull out their igloos, they pull out their thermos, they pull out their Yetis, they pull out their whatever it is, their cups that they have. Do they pull those things out? They went green, didn't they? They discarded all the straws. They're not carrying any straws with them anymore. They just got lids on their cups, and they're just drinking out of sippy cups now, aren't they? They're drinking out of sippy cups. That's what they did. They took their sippy cups down to the place of Marah and stuck them, didn't they? They've been out there 3 days. They didn't do that. That's not what they did. They dove in this thing. They dove in this thing. Picture this. You've been without water for 3 days and you stumble upon some place. Are you going to reach in your purse or your backpack and pull out your cup to dip it in? Or no, they dove right in. They dove right in and started gulping this stuff down. And can you imagine what happened when they popped back up? Well, they just spew the water out. The water just came flying out of their mouth, just spewing this thing out. They stuck their heads down in there trying to slurp it up, but it was a horrible taste, and it reflected their lack of faith. The waters reflected the lack of faith in their life. In trouble, in times of trouble, God showed them what was really in their heart. He revealed to them, this is what is really in your heart. This is what is really in your life. He said this bitterness is a reflection of your life. Now here's a third thing that God shows them. He shows them it's a pattern. This was the pattern. This was a repetitive pattern of their life. And just in a few chapters right here, you can see it to be obvious. Verse 24, it says, the people grumbled at Moses. Chapter 16, verse 2, it says the whole congregation and the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. Chapter 17, verse 2 and 3 says, therefore the people quarreled with Moses. They said, give us the water that we want to drink. And Moses said to them, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord? But the people thirsted there for water. They grumbled against Moses and said, why have you brought us out of Egypt so that we can just die here in the wilderness? Right there, and even in chapter 15 as well, they're grumbling. They're grumbling against Moses. We see this time and time again in just a short time frame. They are grumbling. They fell into a pattern of grumbling, bitterness. They fell into a pattern of being angry against Moses, being angry against God. It happened time after time. So God was showing them while they were in this place, hey, this is a reflection of your life. This is a pattern of your life as well. Don't let that be a pattern. So they grumble. They grumble about wanting meat. They grumble about wanting water again. They're grumbling about everything they can. They were constantly upset. There was this constant anger in them, and it's who they became. It became them. That anger became them. And the tragedy is, you know what the tragedy is? That it was such a repetition in their life. The tragedy is that God said, I can't use this generation. They had become so bitter and so angry, and the cycle that they were in, God looks at them and says, I can't use you. You have no faith. Miracles, you've seen miracles, that didn't deepen your faith. I've shown you what your life is truly like. I've let that reflection of bitterness be displayed in the water, but yet you continue to repeat the cycle. So what does God say? God says, you're still Hebrews, but I'm taking your children. He didn't use that generation. That's a bad place to be. That's a sad thing to be said about people. God looks down and says, I can't use you, but I can use the next generation. I'll work on them. Don't let that be you. Sometimes we go from victory. Sometimes we go to trouble. Sometimes we go to testing in our life, all so that we can see what is really, truly in our own heart. Now he's going to give instruction. So verse 25, the last part of verse 25, the instruction comes. There he made for them a statute and regulation, and there he tested them. So here's the first statute and the first regulation he's going to give. He's going to give 10 more a little bit later. But here's one that he gives, verse 26. And he said, if you will give earnest heed to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his sight, and give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases on you which I have put on the Egyptians. For I, the Lord, am your healer. So the first thing he says here in verse 26 is, I will give you earnest heed. If you will give earnest heed, he says. It's the same word in Hebrew. Earnest and heed are the same word. Shema, I think it is. If you will give earnest heed, it's the same word. It's like putting exclamation points out there. It intensifies. When the Hebrews would put two words, the same words back to back, it intensified what was being said. If you will give earnest heed, if you will hear the Lord, if you will pay attention, if you will listen. If you will put your listening ears on, put your listening ears on. If you will perk your ears up, perk your ears up. Get up, is what he was saying. Listen to what I'm saying. It was to intensify. It was a teachable moment. They were to be taught here. But the question is, it's a teachable moment, but will they learn from it? Still in verse 25, read the whole thing. He cries out to the Lord. The Lord showed him a tree, and he threw that tree into the waters. This is a picture of Christ right here. Your life is the picture of sin. Sin is bitter. Your life is sin. Sin is bitter to God, but what happens to your life? A cross, a tree is thrown into the middle of your life, and what happens to your life? It becomes sweet. There's a picture of Christ right there. Verse 27, then they came to Elim. There were 12 springs of water and 70 date palms, and they camped there beside the waters. Now this speaks of God providing plenty to them. There's 12 springs, there's 70 date palms. They camped there beside the water. God is going to provide plenty. He's going to provide more than enough for them. God provides more than enough for you. He provided His Son for you. He provided forgiveness of all of your sin. Not just some, not just part of them, not just 3/4, not just 7/8 of your sin. He provided a way for all of your sin to be forgiven through the cross. Your life was sour, it was bitter, but the cross makes you sweet. It makes your life sweet. It makes your eternity sweet. The forgiveness of Christ. So He does that, and He blesses them beyond more than they could imagine. These 12 springs, these 70 date palms are there, and they're going to camp beside them. So that's what this is. It's a picture of God providing plenty, more than enough. God does that for us. He provides more than enough. Now here's how He did it. Elim is just off the Red Sea a little bit. Nobody knows exactly where Elim is today, or where exactly they were. But Elim was just right off the Red Sea. They came to Elim where there's 12 springs. They do know where these springs are, though. They know where these springs are, and they're still there. Still there today, these springs are. Some of them have been capped off, maybe sand or something, dirt has kind of clogged them off, but there are still, I believe I read 7 of them still active today, and these Bedouin people still go down there and they still dip a jug or a canteen or something down in that water, and they'll still drink it. Now today there's more than 70 of these palms down there, these date palms. There's over 2,000 of them there today. But where does this fresh water come from? Because they're not far off of the Red Sea. And the Red Sea, I believe, had salt water in it. So you would think that there might be some kind of cross-contamination with these wells, with this spring that's coming up, maybe with some salt in them. God had just led them from one place. He brings them to this water here to have this water. And where does this fresh water come from? Well, hundreds and hundreds of miles away, there are at least 3 mountains, if not more, that are snow-capped for the majority of the year. Now, if you've been asleep, listen to me here, because this is good news for you right here. In the midst of your trouble, in the midst of your trial, God's already at work. Matter of fact, He's already done. He's already finished what needs to be done in your life. You're just about to walk through it. So back in this day, these snow-capped mountains, when the snow would melt, the water would run down these mountains hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles away. The water would run down these mountains. It would find its way into crevices into the ground. It would find its way into these underground rivers, and it would pop up at the springs of Elim. Fresh water would pop up at these springs of Elim. The amazing thing is, these Hebrews were walking around grumbling about the situation in their life, about their current living conditions. These Hebrews were grumbling about their current living conditions, but little did they know, God, underneath their feet, had already met their need. And do you know when He met their need? Did He meet their need when they grumbled about it? Did He meet their need when He asked for it? Did He meet their need when the tree was thrown in? When did God meet their need? God met their need at creation. I mean, surely you don't believe that those mountains just rose up overnight, do you? Surely you don't believe just a couple of atoms bounced off one another and you walked out of a pond somewhere on the Nile River and your ancestors go back to a little dirty, stagnant pool, do you? God met their need at creation. When God created those mountains were ready. Those mountains were prepared for that day. Those mountains were prepared. The snow was ready. The snow was ready for that day. At creation, God already knew the struggle that they were going to be in. At creation, God already knew the trouble that the Hebrews were going to be in on that day. And while they were grumbling and complaining the whole time, God in His provision, God in His grace, God in His mercy, if I'd have been God, if you would have been God, what would you have wanted to do with them? You'd want to wipe them off of the face of the earth. You would have had your fair share of their grumbling and fussing. Do any of you like for somebody to come to you and complain about something at work, something at the store, something at the office, something about the price increase of this, that, or that? Do any of you like for people to come and complain to you? You ever see that El Chico's used to have this, the complaint department? When El Chico's was in Paducah, you know, the complaint department, there was a door there, but the door was locked and it didn't open. Matter of fact, there was just a wall right behind it. Nobody likes to hear the complaining, bombardment. But that's where they were in. That was the repetition of their life. That was the cycle of their life, the pattern of their life. But yet God still in His grace and His mercy and His wisdom, He had already started a work thousands of years before, and it was underneath their feet the whole time, and all they had to do was get to it. So what I'm telling you is whatever struggle or need you have in your life, God did not just become aware of it on the day that it popped up on your radar. God was aware of your struggle, your need at creation. Before you were formed in the womb, God already knew. And I'm telling you that God has made a way. People of God, He has provision for you. You may be walking over that provision right now, unaware that river is flowing just beneath the surface. But at just the right time, do not lose faith. At just the right time, God's provision will bubble up at the right place. That's good news. Will you be faithful? Will you walk through the trial? Will you go through the trouble? Will you make it through the testing? Not every day is going to be a mountaintop experience. Not every day is a victory. But God was aware of this day, of your need, today or tomorrow. He's already aware. He's already provided. You just need to be faithful and stay with Him till you meet the place of the spring of life where that provision bubbles up and your needs met. I want to ask you to bow your head. Stand this morning if you would.